Well, good morning, community. Good morning, my brothers and sisters. Welcome to Stroke of Genius Show Survivor Experience. I got a guest for you that is an Englishman in the foreign land of Scotland. His name is Simon Harris. I really want you to hear his story. And we're going to ask, I don't know if you guys saw his profile pic, but I'm going to be asking him where the eagle, how in the world he had an eagle landing on him. But let's see about a stroke survivor story first. So let me bring him online.
Welcome to the Stroke of Genius Show, Survivor Experience. Now, here's your host, Aaron Avila.
Well, there he is. Simon, hey, Simon, how you doing? There's Simon Harris.
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Great. Now, you're an Englishman in a foreign land.
Yes, I was born in London, and about 25 years ago, the Royal Bank of Scotland asked me to sort out something, and so I was working in Edinburgh, and my wife found a derelict farmhouse, and we've never left.
Great.
The kids were born south and grew up north.
Great. Well, that's really, really great. It's great to have you here this time. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Well, let's jump on your story. We have 30 minutes together, go by super quick. Tell me, before you had your stroke, describe what kind of life you led. What did you do for a living? What you doing for work before your stroke?
In the 20 years before my stroke, I was mainly training people in corporate change and project management. And I was working mostly across Europe and the Middle East. So I was traveling a lot of Monday to Friday travel. And I was living in Scotland, as I said, still here, because I'd done a job in Edinburgh, and we'd set down some roots, really. Apart from that, I had two kids and a wife who's with me still, although the kids are now in Dubai and not very far down the road. My daughter is down the road. My son's in Dubai. And the house that we bought was derelict, as I said just at the beginning. So I used to sort of tinker around outside and in the garden and didn't do very much when I was busy. And now, post-stroke, it keeps me occupied. I've been glass fibering the last couple of days, so I've got glass fiber resin and all the dirt sticks to it. And I can't, my hands are clean, but they're dirty because I can't get the dirt off them.
Yeah, I know. That's really amazing. I figured it out there. And just before you and I were talking, you were on a ladder. You climbed a ladder yesterday. You're like your wife didn't catch you.
Yeah. So the first time I went up a ladder after my stroke, she was a bit concerned because I was a lot wobblier a year or so ago. But yeah, I went up it quite easily today. I was putting a plant that's a rampant creeper in the ground next to the wall. So I went up a ladder and I drilled 3 holes, put a vine eye and a bolt with an eye on the end of it and some wires, so the plant's got something to grab hold of. And actually, I felt really quite stable. I've got just enough right hand functionality. My arm's quite good now. Get it on camera.
Oh, wow, yeah.
That I can move the arm and I could hook it over the rungs ahead of me and climb up. And it just gave my vestigial system the confidence that it was never going to hold me, but it just told my vestigial system that I was in balance. So it's been a learning curve, all that sort of stuff, adjusting to it. But actually, I felt quite safe. But was it last year or a bit longer? It took me about 3 days to work out how I could position the ladders to get onto the roof of my shed because it was leaking and the rain was destroying everything.
Okay, well,
Anyway,
really, okay, well, you get a lot of that ladder, that's great. I think it's great. But let me understand, before you start, you're in the financial industry.
well, corporate change, project management. Um, I had been in IT, but I was no longer hands on in IT environment. I was more about telling other people that it, well, I think that as a topic, it's highly misunderstood. We got all this argument about agile v waterfall and things and it's been taken over by exam sellers who sell exams rather than they sell competency to do the job. Um, so I'm pleased to be out of it and away because I spent a long time in it, gathered a lot of expertise, earned a reasonable living telling other people about it. But I was beginning to feel that even with my expertise, it was not equal to the challenges that the world really throws up. I am doing other stuff now that I think is very much more equal to it, but that's not really the topic of today. It will be very niche for your audience.
Yeah, well, I did kind of want to know, did you know what a stroke was before you had one?
I certainly knew what one was. Um, and I think in hindsight, my doctors didn't have a good idea because I went to them over a course of several years saying I was having episodes where I didn't feel right. And with the knowledge I now have, I'm pretty certain that they were TIAs, transient ischemic attacks, and but symptomless after the event. Well, they would be being TIAs, but I don't think I'm pretty convinced. Well, after I had the stroke, I was asked if I would take part in a research program, a couple of them, but one of the research programs it was investigating small capillaries in the brain, and so they gave me three very extensive MRIs. I was in the MRI thing for like 90 minutes each time, and they fed me carbon dioxide with a isotope in it on one of the occasions, which was two. Anyway, where the neuro something or other who was investigating whether my cognition had been affected said, "Well, I've been looking at your MRIs and I see you've had quite a few strokes." And I said, "Oh, well, I knew I had one, the one that put me in hospital." So I reckon the TIAs were perhaps they were symptomless strokes. So yeah, I knew what one was, but I didn't recognize when I was very probably suffering them. I was having visual migraines with no other symptoms, and it was stuff like that.
Yeah, that's something you bring up something that's really important for people to know out there, and that's TIA, which is really a precursor or warning sign that there's a big stroke coming. And sure enough, what we till you have the TIAs, you brush them off like normal people do, thought of a headache, whatever, you brushed it off. What were you doing when you had your major stroke? When you had your serious stroke?
Well, It's a bit of a hobby horse because um, people keep repeating fast, face, arms, speech, and time, and none of that had any relevance to me. So I got up just as I had the previous 1,000 days, but this day I banged the bedpost on the way past the end of the bed and then banged into the door frame and things. Anyway, I came downstairs. I spent an hour and a half recording some training videos that to edit and put up online. And I said to my wife, I don't feel quite right, but that wasn't a new thing necessarily. But then about 11 o'clock in the morning, I said to her, I really don't feel right. I should go down to the local accident and emergency department of the hospital, which is about 2 miles behind me. And I said, I think I'm having a stroke. I walked in there on my own, said, I think I'm having a stroke. And they did all the tests. How can you grip? Can you walk in a straight line? Have you got peripheral vision? And I could do all of that stuff. And the junior doctor I saw said, I'm not quite sure, but I think it would be a good idea if you stayed here overnight. So I stayed in, and in the morning I got in the shower. So I got there on my own, but I fell over, and I did have my balance was worse, and they admitted me to the ward, and by the following day my right hand side didn't work. So it took 36 hours from the onset of me not feeling right to the point where I couldn't function. And they didn't give me any clot busting or anything like that because they couldn't determine when the event had started. So they couldn't determine whether I was within a window that was documented in their protocols. So I probably suffered the full effects of the clot that got me. It took away my right hand side. It took about a month to get back to walking. It took quite a long time for my taste buds to come back to working, although they don't work entirely normal. They pretty much. And it's taken 2.5 years of constant working on my arm to get it mobile. So my walking isn't good. I could probably walk a mile. It hurts to walk because my gait has changed and I'm not steady and I stub my toe. But I can pick my foot up. I don't need an AFO or anything like that. I can move my arm around from the shoulder and the elbow. The wrist doesn't really work terribly well, and the fingers. There are 2 fingers I can move. Oops, I'll get it in the camera. I can move that in. Well, if you count the thumb, there are 3. So I can do but these 2 just refuse to do things. I can pull them in, and if I grasp something like that,
from LATimes.com.
that's it. I'm now left.
Separated into
hold on, Simon, hold on. Alexa, off. You said something tripped my Alexa. I don't know.
There's a good joke that the radio DJs do, isn't there? They say,
don't say it. Don't say it.
Right. They say voice recognition, play a song or something. But anyway, if I hold that and I grasp it, I can't let go of it now.
I know the feeling.
It will fall out of my hand eventually. I can't grasp it very tightly, but I can't let go of it either. So if somebody tries to take something away from me, it feels as if I'm being obstreperous.
I do have something you said, which is really common when I interview people that have had strokes. You had a stroke. You weren't feeling well. You had all the warning signs, but you brushed it off. You kept going. You kept shaking his head. I'm not. You're not acknowledging that you have some serious issue happening. And I've also heard that the delay in the uh, deficits, this hours, sometimes days, does happen. Can happen to where you don't lose everything at first. I had a brain aneurysm and I had a stroke, so it's pretty massive right up front. A lot different thing with that front, but I have heard of people having a stroke and then days later losing their abilities, which is really unusual. How did you? I'm curious. What was your wife doing? Who got you to the ER when you finally realized something is seriously wrong? What happened? Explain that moment in time for us, if you would, please.
Well, it wasn't a moment. There was a long unwinding episode, at least for me.
Right.
I don't know how my wife felt when I said to her, "I think you ought to take me down to A&E," but I do know after they kept me in and when they confirmed that I'd had a stroke, how it impacted her, which was tremendous impact, because she had no knowledge or support or anything like that. But there wasn't an event for me. It was a gradual onset of stuff. And it wasn't anything that I had any difficulty accepting. It was like, okay, I've had a stroke. That's going to be life changing.
Oh my God.
And the 2 days before I had the stroke, I'd had a conversation with Lee, my wife, that so, and it was the middle of COVID, and I said to her, "Let's just take the pension and retire, and I won't try doing any work." So we made the life-changing decision on I don't know whether it was a Monday, I can't remember. But we made the life-changing decision, and then on like the Tuesday, we had the life change for a different reason. So it didn't give me. It wasn't. It wasn't that there was a change in the way if somebody falls over and stuff doesn't work and there's panic and everything like that. And the other factor I have noticed, because I inhabit quite a lot of the forums, like there's one on Reddit and there's several on Facebook, and there are various other ones where stroke survivors go for mutual support and conversation. And I see a whole spectrum of reactions, but I think it is observable that some people are at the end of the spectrum that says, I've had a stroke, life goes on, I adjust. And other people are at the end of the spectrum that says, I had a stroke and it's so unfair and somebody ought to be to blame. And the people who are at the end of the spectrum of I've had a stroke, now life adjusts, etc., seem to me both to be more content in their lives and to make better progress on recovering. The folk who are at the other end spending a lot of energy lashing out, being upset, etc. Obviously, a stroke affects. It's a meaningless term, really. Since the brain controls everything, to say you've had a stroke simply says somewhere in that control system, something has gone wrong. I think that there is insufficient discussion. There appears to me to be insufficient knowledge amongst the professionals, but maybe it's just that they only discuss it in their own forums. But there are 7 or more brain function networks, like the salience network and the central executive network. And those networks are brain messages that pass through lots of different physical areas of the brain. So a stroke impacts a place in the brain, but when it's impacted a place in the brain, it must be disturbing networks that incorporate that physical place within their network. And yet you never hear anything about that. So I didn't have an event, and I had a gradual onset, and it hasn't really manifested in an event since. I've just spent the last couple of years making the best that I can of it, and fighting the boundary, and I managed to push that boundary back month by month.
Well, that that brings up a really good point. Stroke is what happened to us. It doesn't define us as people. We are not a stroke. How we respond to stroke, we actually control. And you brought up a great point that you could choose to wallow in darkness, wallow in the same life. So poor me, complain, say it's bad. This is why Stroke TV media really wants to make it clear. I believe that before any therapy, and I told this to a very a group of medical professionals I engage with on LinkedIn. But I said priority one should be get the mindset right first before doing any therapy. Lay the foundation, the groundwork of the mind, and how important it is to have the right mindset on stroke.
Well, I've actually used the term survivor talking to you because we haven't previously established vocabulary. But if I put any posts onto the forums, I always use the term stroke warrior, because I am not a patient. I'm not ill. I may be slightly damaged as a result of the stroke, and the stroke doesn't define me. I am not a stroke survivor, full stop. I happen to have had a stroke. I am a lot of other things, like a husband and a father and the like. And I dislike the term survivor as a definitional term. And I particularly dislike patient, because I think the medical profession has a couple of 100 years of tradition which establishes the wrong relationship. And they don't look on the people who are going through chronic support as opposed to acute. There is perhaps a difference in acute support, but in chronic support, they should be looking on people as clients, not patients, and they should be doing the best for their clients.
Yeah, I think if you'd ask me what kind of gets under my skin is when you call her a stroke victim. I don't like that. I don't know. That's the one I hate the most, is being called a stroke victim, because I'm not a stroke victim.
Yeah,
Like I said, I'm stroke warrior like you. My life is not over. My life is actually better now than it was before my stroke.
and I think the term stroke warrior is more inclusive and useful too, because a stroke doesn't affect and change the life of one person. It has an impact inside the head of one person, but every relationship that they are part of, and therefore every other person who they engage with, that relationship and degree of freedoms within it is changed. So my wife is as much a stroke warrior as I am, and she was the one who was emotionally the most affected by it, and has been. Yeah, somebody's just commented, I'm a stroke warrior. Good for you. We should all warriors together.
That is, if I had to guess, that's Sherry Pettis from Niagara Falls, United States. So good for her. I really want, if there's one thing out of this interview, I want everybody to understand you are not your stroke. You are how you respond to stroke. That is what defines you. And when you look at me or you look at Simon, it's a choice. You really do have control over how your future life will go. Stroke does not dictate how your life will go. Oh, hey,
Well,
Katie, let's pause a minute. I give Shelly. Shelly just joined us. Thank Katie. That's the first time seeing this is Katie. Yeah. Katie, tell us where you're located and where you're at. Well, give a shout out. Definitely give a shout out. Talking to Simon, and you're just getting here, but this is Simon Harris he's in Scotland, but I wanted to also tell you this person right here. See how big I'm up on the screen. Jeremy, he is in England. I think he's in England. Where he's located. He's in England. Can you see that? I can't see that all right.
I
Yeah,
can't.
there. You can see
Jamie.
Jeremy
Thumbs up.
He's in England. So I thought you guys are, yeah. Oh, there also John is out there. Thank you for being there. John had a very similar experience that you did. Which, yeah, I don't know what it'd be like to almost have time to prepare for things to go really south. Well, John is in I don't know what NJ. What is
New
NJ?
Jersey, I would guess.
New Jersey, I'm guessing too. Yeah. Well, thank you, John. Thank you for being on there. Really appreciate you being on there. I appreciate all you people that are out there supporting what we're trying to do here. We're doing really May is Raising Stroke Awareness Month. I mean, but in all reality, we're a walking billboard for raising stroke awareness. But
just picking up on the last point,
yeah,
I'd say that everybody, whether they've had a stroke or not, goes through life with a set of boundaries around them. Some they create, and some are created by their relationships and their context. When you have a stroke, you have a non-negotiable resetting of those boundaries, and pretty instantaneous non-negotiable resetting of those boundaries. And you can either complain about it, or you can just carry on in a pre-stroke vein, as it were, of pushing all of those boundaries back. And as long as you put effort into pushing at those boundaries, you will make progress. So I couldn't move my arm when I come out of hospital. I can now get my hand behind my head. I was when I was up that ladder, the 20 minutes before the call, I had put a pair of pliers in my back pocket on the right hand side, and that was the first time I had used the back pocket on my trousers since I had the stroke, so in 2.5 years. And I just said to myself as I tried to put the pliers in on the ladder, that's another milestone. And I might have little milestones like that all the time. So if you just focus on the fact that you can achieve something every month, probably every week, and it's a tiny little thing, when you look back over 6 months of it, you've made a lot of progress.
Yeah, so many times I'm going to back up because you bring up a great point, and that's box. You build walls, you build. A lot of times we're stroke survivors, box yourself in. I'm stroke survivor. You label yourself. You put a box around you. You say, "Oh, I'm this way." That's not true. There's a quote that says, "Don't think outside the box." The truth is, there is no box. We build them. And that's true for every church farm. Don't you agree? We build the box.
There's a lovely graphic I like that if you says, "What is this?" and it shows you a square from one perspective, but as you move around the object, it's a circle from another perspective, and as you move around to the third angle, it's triangle, and it's a single physical object that, depending on which perspective you look at it, you see a square, a circle, or a triangle.
Okay. Hey, look at this question John has for us. So he's been told, I'm assuming, I'm guessing from your question, that he don't. First of all, I'm 13 years post stroke. How many years post stroke are you?
2.5.
Yeah. So what I'm saying, John, don't buy in. I still see gains 13 years post stroke. I was just doing something. I think it was on my exercise bike. I was doing something. My wrist was behaving different, more normal. And I, like you, paused, celebrated the milestone. It was very minor. The only person that could really enjoy that moment is me, because I noticed it.
Whenever anybody tells me that my progress has reached a plateau, I tell them they got the wrong perspective. And it's not a plateau and a ceiling, it's the start of my building the next chapter of capability. I haven't run into a plateau and I can't move forwards. I've got to a level where I'm ready to move on to more capability. So,
All right,
with
John,
that,
yeah, what that's John says awesome. Pull that because that's real. John, listen, bro. I don't know you. Never been on the show before. And for anybody out there, I want to remind you this show is produced every Wednesday, 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Every Wednesday. So if you want to come on, tell your story, let me know, contact me. Or you want to be here, definitely bring yourself, bring a friend, whatever. But Sharon, it goes 30 minutes goes by so quick. We're actually like we're several minutes of the show, but who cares? But I'll get John says he does come on the show. John, message me on Facebook. I'll take guys, you can message me on Facebook. You see my name there. Definitely message me if you want to get a hold of Simon. Definitely get a hold of Simon. Simon, let me ask you, you've made some great points. I'm gonna ask a question that's almost redundant because you've touched on points. What advice? Let's close out the show. But what advice would you give a new stroke survivor?
oh, that's a difficult one because you don't know how people are affected emotionally. I'd say take all the support you can get and make sure anybody in your circle, your carers and loved ones, etc., are getting support as well. You need support, and the people who support you are more in need of conscious thought for their support, because the ripples spread outwards. I got great support because my wife stands with me, and so finding her support was most important to give the continuity of support for me. After that, everything is different depending on who you are. I suppose another thing to say would never believe anybody who says that you won't get capability back, and never believe anybody who says you're going to recover. Recovery isn't possible, but a new life, a rewarding life is possible. And the only thing stopping you is people who project onto you that can't be achieved.
I think it really is, don't let people define who you are after stroke. That's really, do not let them. So I want to thank you so much for coming here and being with us live from Scotland. Thank you so much. Thank you for your story. Appreciate you sharing it. Thank you so
You're
much.
very welcome. Thanks for having me.
All right, have a great day, Simon.
Ciao.
Me on fire,